Japanese schoolgirl named Mitsuko is going on a field trip with her classmates. She likes to write poems, while all her other friends are playing around in the bus. One girl shouts that they should have a pillow fight and proceeds to take out a pillow from nowhere and starts throwing it around. The feathers go everywhere and Mitsuko drops her pen by accident. She bends down to pick it up, and suddenly, a shockwave destroys the bus ahead of them and rips their bus in half, killing everyone. Shocked at what just happened, Mitsuko senses an invisible presence lurking around and quickly gets off the bus and starts running. It follows her everywhere she goes and destroys everyone it gets close to by cutting them in half. She runs into a forest where she manages to escape her pursuer temporarily. Mitsuko arrives at a river filled with dead girls. She takes one of their uniforms that's not stained and wears it while she goes into the river and washes herself clean of blood. She makes it back to her school where a group of students are heading towards their classroom. They all seem to recognize her, but she doesn't know who they are. She meets a girl named Aki, who apparently is her best friend. She's worried about Mitsuko as she's wet everywhere and seems extremely scared. A gust of wind blows towards the girls, and it scares Mitsuko to the point of curling up on the ground. She manages to get up with the encouragement of her friend, but another one blows towards them, and she runs for her life. Mitsuko tells Aki that she had a really bad dream where all her classmates were killed by an invisible force, which is why she's acting the way she is. Seeing that her friend is so agitated, Aki decides that they should skip the first period and go for a walk. They meet up with their other two friends, Taeko and Suri, and manages to convince them to skip class as well. They arrive at the lake nearby, and Aki begins joking about what Mitsuko apparently dreamt of, which got her all scared. Suri says that it's possible that Mitsuko's dream actually happened in a parallel universe, since there are an infinite amount of them out there. She continues to demonstrate this by throwing a rock in the lake, and says that another version of herself would have done the opposite. They all stare at the ripples in the water, and suddenly, a crocodile jumps out from the water and proceeds to bite Taeko, causing blood to fly everywhere. But it turns out that it was only imagined in Mitsuko's mind, as she still has trouble getting over her fears. The girls find more pillows strangely lying around in the forest, and begins having a pillow fight again. She's finally able to relax a little and enjoy playing with her friends while the feathers fly everywhere. Mitsuko notices a drop of blood on her hand, and when she looks up, she sees a bride and a schoolgirl in the distance looking at her, but they disappear quickly when she blinks. Suri continues to tell everyone that she believes everything is determined, but you can break this by doing something spontaneous, like flashing yourself in front of everyone. They all laugh at Suri and proceeds to run back to their school for the second period. The teacher asks the girls where they went, to which they respond that they didn't feel well. As the lessons begin, Mitsuko finds another pillow on the ground. She takes it and throws it to her friend, but gets knocked away by bullets from afar. All the girls in the classroom get shot by a barrage of gunfire, as the teacher holds a Gatling gun in her hand, furious that they skipped class this morning. Mitsuko is saved by her classmates and they proceed to run downstairs, eventually getting outside, away from the buildings. All the teachers begin shooting at the students from the windows as they run away from the school. Her classmates tell her that only she can save them while everyone is dying. They tell her that she must remember why this is happening. They make it outside the perimeter, but everyone gets cut in half by the same entity that was chasing Mitsuko in the morning. She runs as fast as she can and eventually arrives in a town where everyone seems to be a woman for some reason. Mitsuko rushes into the police station and begs for the officer to save her. They walk outside, only to see that everything is fine while the only person acting strange is Mitsuko. The officer then recognizes her as Kiko and brings her inside, asking her what is wrong. She shows Mitsuko the mirror and the face of another woman appears. The officer brings her in her car and proceeds to drive her to a gathering which she is supposed to attend. While driving, all the women on the street are laughing at Mitsuko while knocking on their windows because she is still wearing the schoolgirl's uniform. We learn from the officer that Mitsuko is now 25 and not supposed to be wearing such childish dresses anymore. They arrive at a fancy party and all the girls welcomes her in with excitement. She sees a familiar person in the room, and when that person turns around, it appears to be Aki, who died earlier. Aki tells her quietly that she knows what's going on and proceeds to play along with everyone. We learn that Mitsuko is getting married as everyone begins to do her makeup and dresses. Mitsuko demands to know what's going on, but Aki doesn't give her a clear answer, only telling her to be careful and not panic while putting the wedding dress on her friend. She then starts going crazy, killing the wedding guests one by one in the room while encouraging Mitsuko to do the same thing. Before Mitsuko goes to meet her groom, Aki gives her a glass bottle as weapon. She goes in the hallway and sees all the women cheering as she walks towards a black coffin. As she walks closer and closer to the black box, the cheering from the crowd becomes violent as all the girls begin pushing her around and stripping themselves at the same time. She arrives in front of the coffin, and when it opens, a man with a pig's head jumps out, scaring Mitsuko as she screams in terror. She panics and jabs the glass at her groom, causing the crowd to become silent. She then proceeds to stab and kill all the women in a fit of rage, before Aki arrives and tells her that they must leave now. They make it into the streets, but notices that the invisible entity is following them again. Aki offers to lure it away, while Mitsuko runs and tries to escape. While running on the street, Mitsuko hears another woman telling her to come this way, and calling her Izumi this time. They run across the bridge, and Mitsuko sees in the mirror that her appearance changed yet again to someone else. This time, they're marathon runners, and they proceed to enter a race where everyone is cheering for the girls. As they continue to run, Mitsuko sees her classmates are all alive and all participating in the race. Their reunion is cut short when the groom from the wedding and the teachers from the school begins chasing after them, killing everyone in the way. Mitsuko's friends tell her to take a different route and escape this world, as she is the only hope they have for ending this nightmare. She jumps over a fence and runs towards a mountain, eventually ending up in a large cave where she sees another schoolgirl who's telling her to follow. They proceed deeper into the cave and arrives at a location where there are hundreds of dead students standing in formation. The schoolgirl blames Mitsuko for their deaths and wants her to kill herself so that all of them can finally stop dying again and again. Just before she gets killed, Aki saves her from the girl and proceeds to bring her to another location inside the cave. She then brings out Mitsuko's consciousness by reminding her who she really is. She tells her friend to pull out the cables from her arms because it's the only way to escape from this world and stop the invisible entity from chasing after her. Mitsuko hesitates, but eventually grabs onto the cables and pulls towards her, which ends up killing her friend Aki, but also opening a doorway to the outside. She follows the cables and enters into a world where there are only men. She sees an advertisement of herself on the billboard, and another man who seems to know exactly who she is. Mitsuko struggles, but eventually remembers the man as well. She faints while he tells her that she's actually in the future. Mitsuko wakes up, and this time she walks through a cave-like hallway filled with girls of every kind from all her adventures, standing like statues on the wall. She arrives at the end, only to see an old man playing a video game that shows everything that happened to her from before. He tells Mitsuko that she actually died in 2034, and he acquired her DNA so he can clone her and use her in his video games. In fact, every woman in that universe has died at one point and are used by him for his entertainment. She runs forward and is shocked to see more clones of herself and her friends. It turns out the young man she saw before was the clone of the old man's younger self. He wishes for her to sleep with his younger version as to fulfill his desires from centuries ago. She slowly walks forward and lays beside him, but just as he's about to force himself upon her, Mitsuko remembers what Suri said about changing her own fate. She rips the pillow open and proceeds to hit the man, throwing the feathers everywhere while turning it red. She takes the old man's crane and in a scream of rage, stabs herself in the stomach, ending her own life. Mitsuko's decision to kill herself results in all the characters in the game doing the exact same thing. She slowly wakes up in a field of white snow, finally free of her tormentors, and runs towards her own future.